actually becomes something that's a regional hub, right, where the community is at the table, not at 90% design, right? We're told, hey, do you want a mural? Let's make sure that the mural like represents the community. Well, okay. Where we're actually at the table before big decisions are made, right? So that infrastructure is actually being designed at the margins and with our best interests, right? And our, like us defining what an amenity is, not being just what amenities can be. And so design meeting 1. Okay, for those of you who were not present at our kickoff meeting, super exciting, right? Wonderful, wonderful participation, and also a clear telling of a community that's dying, right, to be included in these types of big transportation projects. So some highlights from the kickoff meeting, right? The question was, which of the following things are most important to you for a path through West Oakland to the Bay Trail, right? And at the top, right, we have reducing air pollution and exposure, which is where West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, that's our bread and butter. So we're glad that got adopted. Followed by access for all, right? Who's deciding that and what does that actually look like? Right? That is still something that we'll have to explore and define a little bit further. Followed by visual attraction. We definitely want something that reduces air pollution and is accessible to all. We also want it to be visibly pleasing, right? That's part of the experience, followed by a crime-free area. Equitable use for marginalized residents. Sustainable development, a sense of community and place. Reducing traffic accidents. And that's specifically traffic accidents that impact pedestrians and bicycles. Service and amenities, and we had 1 vote for other, which is to consider drivers, right, and how what their experience is here. Questions about those survey results. And everything from our kickoff meeting is available online. You can find it at WOEIP.org, and I'm happy also to send that out tonight's workout. Top 3 most important factors continued. What we found here is that in terms, so we sparse the data a little bit further, right? So residents versus non-residents. So 71%, right, of non-residents prioritize attractive space, and then overwhelmingly we see that a crime-free area is extremely important. And again, what crime-free means, right, is subjective, but I would say that at the end of the day, folks want to be able to walk, ride, live, and not fear for their physical safety or the safety of those that they love. Okay. Next slide, please. And in terms of safety and health concerns, what we see cited the most is exposure to vehicle exhaust. For those of you who have walked along West Grand, right, towards frontage, 1, it's not a pleasant walk, and 2, it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good on the lungs, your clothes when you get home. It's a highly polluted area. Noise pollution, right? What does that actually look like when you have a bike and pedestrian path that's parallel to a road? We imagine that'll be loud, right? So how do we actually mitigate that? Traffic safety, right? Specifically, remaining safe from cars and trucks and being in those blind spots. And people at the end of any trip, everyone just wants to get home alive, right? So how do we make sure that we're doing that? With this project, low use to 2 people impacting safety. This one, what this means is, what do we do if it's not, West Oakland Link isn't highly trafficked? What does that mean in terms of our safety? If it's only accessed by a few people during certain hours, does it stop being safe? And then how do we address that, right? How do we make it a high traffic area so that everyone feels safe at all times of use? crime and safety, right, with theft being named specifically. And then other concerns included just lack of monitoring, right, lighting and visibility. Right? Again, is this project only accessible during daylight hours? Is there a way to make it so that I can bike home at night from San Francisco and get home in one piece? Accessibility options, right? Can I take a break when biking is just too much? And litter, right? How do we keep this really cool project? How do we keep it clean and maintained? Right? What does that look like? So what are we doing tonight? We're understanding key locations along the path, right? So we will hear about 5 key segments of the path and understand how they fit into the existing space, followed by exploring the ways to shape the path experience. And then discussing and documenting what this potential design looks like and what you imagine your experience to be when using it. Questions before we jump into the actual design? All right. Meeting expectations for this evening. Essentially, communicate with respect, right? And just be mindful of how much space you're taking up. And, you know, sometimes you might have to defer. Respect time agreements and stay on topic. I love stories. I love hearing anecdotes. Really, really do. Not here. Feel free to email me if you have any anecdotes. But ideally, right, your feedback is clear and it's pointed. And be open-minded, right? Folks are coming in with different stories and different values. And at the end of the day, this type of project is extremely valuable to our community. And this is a team sport, right? So people, right? And we assume good faith. So essentially we're wrestling with problems, not people. Okay. And we're always checking for diversity gaps. Who's missing, right, in these conversations, and moving forward, how do we address that? Gavin, do you want me to introduce you? You know, I want.
Yeah. So my name is Gavin Laurie, and I'm the project manager for MTC Bata. And so we're the ones putting on this project and trying to get it built. We also have Nicole, who you've met, who is moderating this and is the lead from WOEIP. Gio is one of our primary designers. So is Sarah and Getty who's here, and I'm gonna Desandra is the other. So we have a big team here today to really get your feedback and really get in-depth feedback on this. And so we're gonna jump right into the design now. And once we do that, we really want to, you know, hopefully surveys are useful. We'll be around after this. There's a lot of in-depth information you can put online, but we're really trying to get as much input as possible. I know I've said this at our other meetings, I'll repeat it, all of them. This is the time when your feedback impacts the design. As we move forward on the design, there's less and less things that can be influenced because we have to start making decisions and nailing things down. We plan on having this design completed, wrapped up, and ready to go in about 2 years' time, which is pretty quick for such a big structure. So we are moving fast, and we really want your feedback now is the best time, so you'll have the most.
Well, thank you to everybody for coming. I don't know where Zoom world is, but hello. I am really thrilled to be here because actually I've been working on this over 10 years. And when we originally started our work on Gateway Park, which is out where the bridge yard is at the base of the Bay Bridge, it was part of that work with Ferguson Well. We said, wait a minute, why isn't there a bike path to West Oakland and all locations south? There's one to the north, and that's really where this all started. So it's sort of unbelievable that it didn't happen. two goals for tonight. One is to make sure that we move from sort of what I'll call mapping. This map has been out there. I think people sort of know where it is, but we want to get down on the ground. We don't want you to know where it really is. And we want to kind of make sure that all of the detail about where it is understood and woven into the design. And locals always have that information best. So next slide. And we also want to talk about trails in general. So there are a lot of trails in the Bay Area. I sort of picked out some urban trails. None of them are the same. You know, some have more plantings, some have big structures, some have other things, but they do have things in common. Next slide. So we want everyone to think of this first as trails by themselves are a destination and a use. And so when we talk about adding things onto the trail to support it, the number one use is still, oh, I might want to ride my bike on the trail. And that could be all you do. You might just ride it at home. So it's important to remember that as we go through it. Next slide. These are some of the other things you would typically, quote unquote, and we don't have to be typical, but it's just a good framing for our starting point, see on a trail. And so it includes things like rest areas. Do you need parking? Do you need water fountains? What are the kind of things you would expect to have on any trail? And this is a pretty good list for a starting point. Vistas, overlooks, storytelling. Next slide. This list is looking at linear programs. So some of that is the riding on it, but some of it is also procession. Sometimes you get on a trail and first you see one thing and then you see another thing and then you see a third thing. And there's actually information in that for your journey. And we're interested in that as well. Next slide. So we want to just start by looking at the project and saying, well, are there any amenities that would serve the trail that are already here? And there are some things. At the bridge yard, which is a little bit off page, there's bathrooms and parking and seating. And that's actually a terrific thing for public spaces to have bathrooms. It's a big deal, which is why it made it onto our map. There's also an area here where there will be truck parking, where there will be a public bathroom. So that's a second one, which is highly unusual. And then there is seating, and we didn't put planting on here in Mandela Parkway, but there are some things that we start with when we start making decisions. Next slide. We then wanted to get into, well, what are some of the things that this path should have? And what are some of the things that we could have to support the best and highest use? And the first three I'm going to point out are three things that came up in last week's meeting. So the first one is reducing air pollution and exposure. There are different ways you can do this. There are ways you could monitor live time air quality. You could make decisions about whether you were going to ride. You could also learn that depending on where you were on the path, it was better or worse. There's opportunities for education. In some ways, I think the whole path is a billboard for teaching people about this location and making them advocate regionally for its cleanup. And the third thing is vegetative buffers, which have certain dimensions and size and specifications for work. Next slide. The second thing that came up was the idea of sort of comforts, and I'll call them mostly climate comforts. So shade, sound barriers, wind barriers, things that make this habitable. There are places along this walkway, because I've walked it more than once, that are pretty raw, and you're pretty out of scale with the freeways. And so what are, even if it's a small thing, what are the things you can do to make it work? Next slide. The third thing that's come up is safety. And I appreciated that Nicole said that safety means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And certain kinds of safety make people feel unsafe. So we have to kind of find the right kind of safety, and I need your help with that. Some of the things we've identified are the call boxes on the Bay Bridge, sight lines and lighting. The idea that lighting could be done in ways that would show shadow at a distance and really contribute to the overall character of the place. Next slide. I'm going to start going fast now because these are more like popcorn on the brain. You can have one of these, you can have one of those. What do you think about this? And then we'll get to the other content of this. So planting is often a part of trails. I think planting would be very hard to do in some areas, but extremely powerful in this location. Next slide. Accessibility, and we know we have to be ADA compliant. We know the whole trail will be less than 5%, so of the kind of ramps that have no handrails. But what else can we do? What would make this truly like reach forward in terms of accessibility? We're showing you tactile maps, we're showing you furniture, we're showing you texture. There's layers and layers you can go to. Next slide. Storytelling. We actually did the site planning for the Huey Newton Memorial, and think that's an incredible asset. And we sort of wonder what other stories could be told here. We love the model of the Fresh Coast Park. Where's the history of WOEIP? Could that be told out here as an example? Are there other histories that could be told? Next slide. Trailheads and gateways. Again, these kind of trailheads and gateways can be as objective. This is the old shoreline, or as fantastical as you want them to be. You could have a trailhead that's something imaginary if you wanted to. It's really open to interpretation, and maps are very powerful and very culturally provocative in some ways. And so thinking through with, well, what are the trailheads and gateways? Where are they going? What do they connect? Next slide. Interpretation, I think, is also very powerful. Whose stories should be told? What stories should be told here? Which stories are given importance? In what ways are they told? Next slide. Poems and text. This is one that I'm always advocating for because I think it gets forgotten. But we think of art, and as you said, there's a lot of murals in Oakland, and I love murals. I also think there's just this wide variety of stuff we could also do. And so there's a number of famous poets who live around here. There's also others. And so figuring out how to get text into the landscape, even as a procession, can be very powerful. Next slide. We're interested in things that make people engage. Sometimes that's a game. Sometimes that's a way that you learn about history. I'm doing a lot of work with the Ural tribe right now, and really interested in showing language of indigenous peoples in contemporary times and using plant knowledge and using language. All kinds of ways you could do it. Next slide. Maps and directions are going to be a big part of this trail, and that's mapping to other bike trails, but also to important places in the community. What are the important places? What should be connected? Where do you want people to go? Sometimes it's also, where do you not want people to go? It's a lot of decision making in creating a map. Next slide. Seating and places to rest. I think that's one that you would expect that you would have here. I don't think it all needs to be a traditional bench. People can sit on all kinds of things. We are the landscape architects for Brooklyn Basin at Township Commons, and what we really like, there's a lot of seating, but a lot of us, you sit in different ways. You can lean back, you can sit up, you can do other things, and that variety actually makes a very rich public realm because different kinds of people and different generations use the space. And they sit in different ways. And I think it's important actually to have variety as well as the fact of seating. Next slide. Bike infrastructure, obviously a no-brainer. You all may have thoughts about what the most important bike infrastructure is, whether we want walkers, what kind of repair. I have lots of anecdotal evidence. Everybody always wants a bike repair station. I will say most of them about a year later don't have the tools. And so having a conversation about the best way to deliver some of those things. We really want that, but how are we going to really do it? Next slide. And then opportunities for play. Many people say, oh, this is for kids, but I will tell you, grown-ups like to play as much as kids, turns out. And having the unexpected thing, oh my God, you've got to go under the Wood Street overpass. You wouldn't believe it. There's an ogre 30 feet tall. This is the one in Seattle. Is there something that does that? Driving a throughput of people that gives them more than one reason to come here and go here and use it, so it really activates it like a healthy blood flow through the space. Next slide. Geeky.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. I'm Geeky Sawal with Crittens and Will. I'm an urban designer and have been working with Sarah Keel and the Bata team for over a decade on this. So this is actually a great moment for us to kind of come and speak to you. Thinking of trails and this kind of opportunity as both a strong identity marker, both visually and experientially, is something we would want to kind of really engage you all to get some input on. Next slide. As we think about the bridge, it's of course a path of travel, but also it could also be a strong visual landmark, and it would put West Oakland on people's mind and people's memory and kind of people's kind of mental map of the Bay Area, and be a place to come and make that a destination by itself, just because of the nature of how we plan for it and how we design it. So we would love to have you all think about And as we bring more examples from across the globe, it's an opportunity for us to think of it as a piece of art to do. Next slide. And looking to engage some of the local partners here and the kind of local community here and celebrate some of the more entrepreneurial spirit and the arts culture that exists in West Oakland and in the East Bay, and look to have that imprint on this kind of a trail moment. I think is a great opportunity. Next, please. As we kind of introduce, and Sarah's going to walk us through the path and all the different moments, but starting to imagine where there might be these moments and opportunities opportunity for people to pause and linger and look up, create lookouts or create areas for some kind of respite. I think that's something we want to build into, and it shouldn't just be a path trap. So definitely want your input on that. Next, please. Are there opportunities as we kind of navigate a lot of great difference? Are there opportunities to kind of embed and take advantage of the spaces that are being created to be opportunities for play and destination for different age groups, and inviting it to be more of a infrastructure that helps the community or brings the community together? So would love to get thoughts on those aspects, right? And yeah, definitely, I'll turn back to Sarah here talking about other elements of the trail.
So in addition to knowing what programs you want, where they go is sometimes more important than what they are. And so we want to remind you that community top three, and I recognize the fourth one is only one foot short, but top three are reducing air pollution and exposure, accessible to all, and visually attractive. And so next slide. We wanted to walk you through the location of the trail in great detail. And part of it has to do with what are the stories we're telling. I think there's a really important environmental justice story to tell that would be an international story if we told it right. How we could use the trail to support advocacy for reducing pollution and exposure, and how does the trail how does the decision about what stories to tell make the trail feel inclusive and accessible? So next slide. As we go into the location, we want you to think about the elements we talked about and the idea that you're telling stories or you're locating things with purpose and intention. And we're going to walk you through these 5 locations. So we're going from the pink line on the map to really down into the fabric. So I'm going to start at number 1. Number 1 is at Mandela Parkway, and it's really where it's sort of environmental justice story 1, which is the planting of Mandela Parkway, which is an incredibly significant thing, and how we touched down with our project. Next slide.
Start that with the Cyber Freeway.
Yes.
All right. We can go back to the beginning of the story.
Do you want me to start there?
That's when you have to start.
Okay.
Mandela Parkway didn't get to be Mandela Parkway.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was really shorthanding it. So the reality is there was a very healthy and vibrant neighborhood that was cut off by freeways in this location. There was a lot of destruction in this area. And with the earthquake, the Cypress Freeway fell down, and there was an opportunity realized really because of advocacy of locals in the community to come back and not rebuild that, and instead to put this planted piece, which is what we today would call Mandela Parkway, in here in response to the earthquake. Do you want to add anything?
Yes. Cypress Freeway was built because the people from San Francisco and the other end of Alameda County get to San Francisco. It was never about air pollution. It was never about the who lived in the neighborhood of West Oakland. It was helping 7 people get from one end to the other.
Yeah.
So they had to come through this neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you helping me tell the whole story. I'm going to go then in detail, but keep jumping in, because I want to make sure we tell this the right way. So starting at Mandela Parkway as it is today, this is a view looking west towards San Francisco at the intersection of Grand and Mandela Parkway. And we put a few sort of comments about it. We may not have them all, but there are some things that we're noticing about this area. Next slide. This is the same view showing the location of the West Oakland Link, and you can see that it starts right at the corner of Mandela and Grand, and then it kind of splits like a tuning fork. And part of it stays low, and part of it goes on to the existing structure there. And so we're thinking about what some considerations of that location would be. Next slide. We're also showing you a plan of the same thing. So what you're seeing here is Mandela Parkway running top to bottom of this page and Grand running left to right on this page. All the blue are bike paths that will either be built as part of the Grand Avenue project or are existing, and we're showing how we're tying into that with this West Oakland Link project. So this is a big deal intersection for bike circulation. Next slide. We have questions about what should happen here. What's the right story to tell? Is it a place where we should make it, have amenities for kids to interact with? Does it need some giant, not a dragon, but some giant piece of sculpture that would be decided on by the community to herald its location? Does it need some way to frame views? Does it need none of these things? Perhaps most importantly, we're really here to find out what you think. Next slide. These are some questions that we've put out to sort of start asking questions about this location, and we have different questions for each one, and they're provided in the survey. They're also provided in your packet, so you can think about some of the things that are on our mind. You can also come back and say, you're missing, 5, 6, and 7. I think you should strike out number 3, or whatever you think is important. Next slide.
This is maybe a common average route, but I'm just curious where the routes are compared to some of these intersection treatments that are given. As an example, I might find on where I want kids to be and not have them be next to roads.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide a map after this meeting with a truck overlay, but as a general statement, maybe not satisfying, all of our bike path pieces are separate from trucks. They're a protected bike lane. There's no interaction.
It's more like I know that the trucks go from Maritime down the Strand and then hook right on that.
Yes.
So even though physically someone would not be, in danger of not run over. Air quality wise, the first would still be impacted.
That's great. No, that's correct. Yeah. So I think we need to get an overlay of that onto here, which we're certainly happy to provide. I would say in terms of all of our locations, we are near trucks for the length of the bike path is the reality of the project. Next slide. I'm going to get through all these. We can talk a little more then. The second location is the West Grand Alley. So this is the piece where when you're on West Grand, some of the bike path is going up onto the existing structure, but there's this space adjacent to it, which sort of feels like a frontage road by the past the Peralta Studios and going down to Wood Street. And that is a very unique location. There's almost no planting, and that highway ramp to the building creates kind of a canyon. Next slide. This is the location of the bike path. So you're seeing part of it is going up onto the structure, but another piece is going to be in a carless street at that lower level, in that sort of street level there, which is a really unique condition. It's one of the places we probably have the most room to do planting. Next slide. This is then a view of that in plan. So again, for orientation, Mandela Parkway on the right side of your screen, frontage road to San Francisco on the left side, or frontage road and San Francisco way to the left of your screen. And we're showing you how it's splitting, both going up on the structure, but also going in that street level all the way to Wood Street, crossing underneath at Wood Street, and then we'll get into the next piece of this. Next slide. We wanted to give you some sections to show you what this looks like. So those are 2 photos on the right that show the West Grand Avenue elevation today. You can kind of see that narrow canyon quality. I'm showing you here the pathway on the ground and the pathway on the structure. You have both options. Next slide. We have some thoughts about, hey, what should happen here? Should the ground plane be different? Should there be seating? Should there be planting? What are the right things to do here? Next slide. And then we turn at Wood Street and we go underneath the Grand Avenue access pathway, and you go underneath there. So there is a bike path above, but we're also crossing underneath. Next slide. Some thoughts about what is the opportunity of crossing underneath that area of Wood Street? What could you do there? What should happen there? Next slide. Some prompts, which we'll give you in your packets, but you all can think about, you know, what wrestle with the question of that location. Next slide. And then we get to the frontage road loop. And so you discussed this in the last meeting, the idea that there could be a way that you could get up very slowly. There's a stair, and I understand there's room for an elevator as well that would get you up to that upper level. And I've been calling this the paperclip. This kind of looks like a paperclip, but it winds you around. So next slide. This is showing you that location. We're now looking kind of north in this view. What you're seeing is Wood Street on the right, and then Frontage Road, Mandela to the right, San Francisco to the left. We're starting to get very three-dimensional. Great views, not a place where people outside of cars currently feel welcome and isolated. Next slide. This is showing you where the bike path would go. And these drawings, we've done our best to give you a really three-dimensional understanding of how that works, how you cross underneath Wood Street, how you wind around and you make your way up. And partly why it's so long is so that it's a comfortable grade to come up. Next slide. This is what that looks like in plan. You can see how it winds around through here. Next slide. And this is a section which I think is helpful to understand what this is. So we're showing you that it is a long, slow climb. It's a very comfortable 2.85, doesn't feel steep at all in terms of going up it, but it's a long loop around and you spin around and get sort of 360-degree views. Next slide. These are examples of some things as a question. Should there be a destination program? What should happen there? Next slide. Some prompts on the same one. Next slide. We'll come back to these just to keep us going. So Maritime is the next piece. Many of you all know Maritime because you may have used it to get to the John Sutter Regional Shoreline piece. You know there's going to be truck parking that happens in here. And the location here is really about both of those things. Next slide. So this is an aerial view just to orient us again. San Francisco is at the top of the page. Mandela is at the bottom of the page. Maritime Street is crossing through to Wake Avenue. So Edmund is on the right. The port is on the left. Next slide. This is showing you where the bike path is. For most of this, the bike path stays high at the level of the freeway, but there is one ramp that would take you down and land you at the sidewalk level on Maritime and service the truck parking facility. Next slide. This is a plan view of that. We tricked you because now Mandela's on the right, San Francisco's on the left, but you see how that works. There's an existing bike path on Maritime Street. The link is staying high. The truck parking is here, and there would be a ramp that would land at sidewalk level and then take you back up to get on. Next slide. This is an aerial view of that same ramp, Mandela on the right, Maritime Street in the foreground, showing how that might work if you were coming up Maritime and taking the ramp up to use the elevated pathway. So it's quite high in the air. Next slide. This is an elevation, Maritime Street today, as you're looking north toward Edmund. It has the freeway structure, has some signs on it. The bike path would really be in front of those signs. Signs would probably have to move. And we're giving you the same elevation to show you how that bike path works to get you back up and on. Want to point out that one thing that I think, next slide, is really great is there are multiple places to get on and off the path. So this is showing you that because of that height, you have the opportunity for overlooks, public art. Do you want call boxes? What should happen? Next slide. These are some prompts to think about. Next slide. I'm almost done for those of you who are waiting for that. The touchdown is the last piece, and this is really where this connects back into the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge Trail that right now is shown there in green and takes you up to Emeryville and the IKEA. Many of us have used it. And we're showing you how this last piece winds and touches down. Next slide. So this is a view that shows you Mandela would be on the right. You're looking north into Emeryville, San Francisco's page left. Burma Road, which is the road you take out to the bridge yard, is in the foreground. Next slide. You can see how we're winding around here in the pink and coming down. It's a tricky thing of getting over the railroad at a high enough level, getting under the freeway at a low enough level, because everybody has rules about the clearances, but it does work and you can get through and around here. Next slide. This is a view of the same thing in plan. I feel like bikes are getting into the spirit of the, noodles of freeways that we have, but there's a place for bikes to be safely. Next slide. This is showing what that looks like at the touchdown to the existing Bay Bridge Trail, shown in blue, and how this would come down and touch down at that location. Next slide. This is that elevation, again, showing you that it's a very soft grade and that there are places where there might be pretty great views when maybe moments to pause. Next slide. Some ideas about elements that might want to be included here. Again, food for thought. Next slide. Some prompts for you to consider as we actually get into this. We're asking sometimes the same question over and over, sometimes it's particular to the location. Next slide. And the last question I have for all of you is, there is a consideration not just of each location being different, but also of a system. Should there be something that always happens when you get on or off a trail? Should there be something that's consistent about this? And to remind you that the best views are going to be to the south and the west. You're going to get big views that way versus you're going to get less view to the north. Next slide. We wanted to take pause now and ask one question before we get into the next piece, which is there anything that we've said that is unclear or that didn't make sense or that you want additional information about that we've presented so far?
So it seems like the overall section goes up and eventually goes down.
Yep.
What are the obstacles that you have to cross in that from that you actually require to go up and down again?
It's a lot of it is the railroad, and it's also places where there are trucks and you have to get over the clearances for trucks. So essentially, once you leave Mandela, you go up and you can loop and go underneath the freeway in Wood Street and loop around to get up, or you can go straight up the on-ramp. Then you pretty much stay high until you cross the railroad past Burma Road and come back down onto the path. That said, we now have other places where you can get on and off, but they're not the sort of primary spot. Anyone else? Yeah.
So if they're gonna be, I think I saw that they're gonna be connected to get onto the walkway that carry on the Bay Bridge.
Yes. Yeah, the intent is to have one connected system so that, when we started this 10 years ago, people were like, people don't ride bikes. What are you talking about? And that's changed. And they also said, no one will ever walk on the path. And people have used it even though it's so hard to get there. So one of the primary goals is to connect it all.
Couple things. One, port is gonna increase expansion. Where is that at in this process? Two, I haven't heard anything about sea level rise. Three, and the vibration and the noise of the railroad.
And you want us to come back and address all of those?
You need to be addressing all those things.
Okay.
Especially if the port has its way of bringing a mega ship in with 19,000 containers. that will be trying to be deployed from a ship in 72 hours? What does that impact?
Okay. I am not, Gavin, you may know more about this than I do. I don't know as much about the port.
Yeah,
The other two I can talk to.
yeah, so just in terms of the port, one of the reasons that we are trying to get this on an accelerated timeline is because we are worried about the rail lines that are close to the existing Bay Bridge Trail being activated whenever they build out that port. And we do not want to try and build overactive rail lines, so we're trying to get this in. So, you know, that's been a consideration in terms of our timeline and trying to quickly on that. Is that kind of answer?
No, because we do say, oh, okay, the vibration and noise.
Yes.
Okay, that's two different things. Where is the noise study that people's ears, the sound will not be affected when the train is coming through?
Yeah.
All right, that's one. And the vibration, because most of the rail line going north will be double stacked.
Yeah.
Plus, you're gonna have an increase of a transportation line, Amtrak.
Yeah.
Was gonna be moving more frequently. And then, like I just said, there is a plan to expand the port.
Yes.
And then where is the preventative plan for sea level rise?
So on, in terms of going over the railroad tracks, we're talking about the main lines now that are active. This will be using the existing structure. So it will be on the existing Grand Avenue structure. And so as it goes over the railroad lines, it'll be very similar to the road today. In terms of preparing for the future, this is one of the big reasons that this project was pushed forward because of the increased traffic. So the existing bike lanes that are there now on Maritime and Burma Road, there's huge truck driveways. And so this is really trying to get the pedestrians and cyclists elevated over those and elevated over the future rail line. So a lot of one of the kind of big, the reasons for doing this project is to make sure that there's not that constant interaction between cyclists and pedestrians and the truck traffic that's coming with it. And that includes the OMSS, so the Operational Maritime Services Center, and so we are actually going right over that. And that's once that becomes activated, there's going to be just a lot of traffic, truck traffic and car traffic going in and out. So that's one of them. In terms of sea level rise, I mean, we have looked at it where this is right now and where it touches down is actually on elevated land compared to other areas. So we've had to look at this and make sure that this would not be inundated during sea level rise. That's one of the first things that was looked at with this, but it is on higher ground that, in the next 100 years will not be.
Questions from the folks that are online?
Did we have any, and so maybe if you are online and you have questions, now would be a really great time to post them and then we'll read them off and try and answer.
Yeah, so I'll kick this off here. We have a question here. What ways can this project make that intersection even more friendly? And how does it better integrate with the grand project?
Mandela and Grand intersection.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just want to need some other people at the table because this is going to be a collaboration between DOT from the city of Oakland, people who live right there, and MTC data and this project. There's a lot of different players, but I think it almost needs its own session.
Yeah, and I would say with that, what we've talked with the Department of Transportation about is that we understand that the project they're doing on Grand Avenue is a repaving project, which has limited amount of resources to do things at the intersection, like lights and different timings. So we will be able to come in and bring some additional resources to the project that is being planned right now. It's being planned with our project in mind, but we do have other types of funding that they don't have in a repaving project. So we do plan to kind of take what they're able to do and improve on some kind of more expensive, maybe some more of the kind of technology and lights and things.
Thank you. Let's see, what additional safe infrastructure would be put in place for the frontage road crossing?
That is the same question. So I'm actually gonna try and ask people that are really concerned about safety and the intersections to come to, or it'll be an online meeting on October 24th. This is really the focus of that meeting. We do hope to kind of have more direct diagrams showing the intersections themselves and getting feedback. It's the same thing that we want to get input and get feedback on what people want to see. But definitely there will be investments in the kind of pedestrian lighting and intersection. I mean, we do have constraints because it is, you're asking about trucking routes, Grand Avenue, frontage road, those are trucking routes, right? And so there is certain restrictions. It would be really hard to do something like a raised intersection, but we'll see what we were able to do. But we're gonna have a meeting on October 24th where we really hope to get feedback on that. I would just say that we've heard a ton of feedback from the community about that intersection. That's one of the main kind of concerns that we've heard, at least in the last year and a half that we've been out here collecting feedback. And so that is the primary reason that we were shifting to two entrances and having that Wood Street entrance, because now people will be able to enter it without even having to cross frontage road, which was a major concern. And I know it's a sideshow, hotspot. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So one of the reasons that we kind of altered this design recently was to address that.
Here's another one. What is the reason for having the bike pedestrian lane at the same height as cars for most of the path? Would it be safer, less noisy, less likely for pollution to get to path users if it was above or below the line of traffic?
So there's certain places where I guess it is. I think like going up towards frontage roads, we have to meet a certain grades, right? So we have to, we're keeping it similar because that road was designed to a certain standard and we're kind of raising it the same way. I think that it actually isn't necessarily right beside the roadway for much of the other project. Maybe in detail, but I do know so once you leave where the railroad tracks is, so you go over frontage road towards the bay. Once you go over the railroad tracks, that section of Grand actually goes down. So it goes lower, so it won't be directly next to the road there. And then it's the same thing, there's a number of levels of highways, so it's hard to avoid. There's 3 different levels in a lot of these places. But even once you cross Maritime Street, at that point, the traffic's coming down. So I know in the diagrams, it looked like a lot of it was right next to it. Most of it isn't directly at street level, but it is particularly in the places around frontage road where we will go on to the existing structure over the railroad track. And then there is some other places, but the design is to try and make it as convenient for cyclists and pedestrians. We don't want them to have to go up and down too much. So it's trying to get them at kind of the same height and keep them there as long as possible. So there's less effort.
What is the plan to repave Wood Street and remove the rail tracks?
So we understand that the Department of Transportation is planning on repaving Wood Street. And so we will work with them to figure that out. Obviously, anything that affects our path and crossing there, we'll work on that and make sure we fund that. But we need to coordinate with the Department of Transportation on the Wood Street in particular. So our understanding is there is plans for repaving. If we're going first, we will at least make sure that the sections where cyclists and pedestrians will be using will be safe and not have the barriers of the railroad tracks. But in terms of the entirety of Wood Street, that will be an ODOT.
ODOT or the
Oakland Department of Transportation.
Okay, so you're saying that Oakland Department of Transportation is in a plan of removing the rail tracks.
I don't know. I know that they're planning on repaving Wood Street.
And you can't repave Wood Street without moving the railroad tracks.
I'm assuming that's the case, but I haven't. I think it's in their 2027 paving plan. So I haven't seen it.
With regards to that, there's another question on have the Wood Street encampment residents have been engaged in this process yet?
No, so that is a good feedback. We can reach out and engage them, but we haven't directly engaged them. So I think that's something that we'd work with the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project on that approach.
I'm a little confused about the frontage road loop. Could you explain a bit more why you decided to have like another access point? Isn't just another access point to get?
Yeah, so there's there's two things driving this. The one is the feedback that we heard that people were concerned about crossing frontage road, and our desire to seeing that there was an opportunity there where we could give another entrance point where people would just completely avoid frontage road. It's really nice. You'll be able to, if you start on Wood Street, you'll be able to go from the West Oakland neighborhood eventually all the way to downtown San Francisco without having to cross any streets. And we think that's a really kind of valuable, asset for the community and to not have to cross frontage road, because no matter what, there is a certain amount of lanes that have to stay there and it does need to maintain as a truck. So there's, so that is kind of set. There's the other thing that we did look at there is, I think as everyone's aware, there is an apartment building that has just gone in there.
Yes.
When this project was originally designed, that apartment building was not there. And so there was thought that there would be a very wide structure going right beside there. It is extremely challenging to do that right now. If you walked up there with the building, which, I was a few weeks ago, I feel like you could almost if that path was there, you'd be able to kind of jump out your window onto the structure itself. It is very close. And so it's that building, that wasn't there when this was originally planned. Now it is. And so we're trying to find ways of designing it where we can make it work with the existing building.
There's another question on do these plans address the use of non-bicycle, non-walking transportation options to provide more alternatives to cars in connecting downtown Oakland, West Oakland, and Treasure Island?
So maybe if they can specify, I'm thinking maybe in referring to more like scooters and kind of micromobility devices. So if this is the case, unfortunately, there's rules right now on the existing East Fan path that do not allow scooters and have a speed limit of 15 miles per hour. We all know that the typical e-bike, even if it doesn't have a speedometer, goes 20 miles per hour. So we are engaging the different regional entities on these questions. So I don't think that we've ever considered precluding, scooters and different, mobility devices and things like that on the path. We are trying to start that conversation ahead of time so that when the West Oakland Link opens as part of a bigger Bay Skyway Phase 1 pathway to Treasure Island and Ferry, that this is sorted out. And so we are allowing kind of all of the vehicles that would want to use it.
Yeah, I really love the idea of making the Grand Alley and Carlos Street. However, that street is very much empty in terms of pedestrian housing. It's just continuous street of huge warehouses that are not really welcoming as a public space. So I'm wondering if there's plan to change the use of the warehouses that are adjacent to the alleyway to make it, I don't know, commercial or public space or something that can be more welcoming in the project, or is it all?
It's out of the scope of this project because it's private property, but I think it is an interesting chicken or an egg problem because you wouldn't have wanted to have something on your ground floor now because it's not super nice next thing. So you sort of wonder whether that would ever change. If this was a Carlos Street, does that stuff take on a different identity? It's an interesting question to ask. It doesn't fall within the purview of this project, but it might be worth talking to some of the people who own those ground floors and see if they're interested.
Yeah, or it's almost more of a city discussion, right? Because the zoning right now is for light industrial. And so, you know, there's limited uses that can go there. You know, this is a huge investment by the state, the federal government, you know, there's a lot of money coming from a lot of places in here. So maybe that is something that would be desired in the future, would be to kind of change that. We hope to at least lay the foundation for a great space, an alleyway. You know, I think it's going to really benefit the residents of that new apartment building. There's 226 new apartments being built there. You know, at least they'll be able to walk in, you know, into the neighborhoods past there. So you know, we're looking at putting the investment in as a kind of transportation and placemaking investment. I think that the other conversation would be with the city.
We have another question on how wide is the path and how much room is mandatory for bicyclists, pedestrians versus other things like plants and interactive materials.
Yeah, so in general, I would say the entire path is planned to be 15 feet wide. So that is very similar to the existing eastbound path. The one exception is we are dividing it into two 10-foot paths. Where you saw the split on the Grand Avenue alleyway. So to go up onto where frontage is, that would be a 10-foot path. And then the Wood Street path would also be a 10-foot path. Or 12-foot path, sorry, would be a 12-foot path with a stairwell there. So we you know, like I said, we're dealing with this challenge of that apartment building there that really makes it difficult to make the full 15-foot going. And so this is the way we're trying to address, you know, enough kind of width to meet this, what we think is going to be a huge amount of future demand once you can go all the way to San Francisco. And at the same time, you know, increasing the access through having two axes.
One of the problems in Oakland, after we have all these new structural type things with the art, public art, who is going to be the responsible party of maintenance?
Yes.
Steps, maintenance and repairs. Who is going to be responsible? Because we know starts off with one agency and then it dwindles down the agency, then gave it to a third party contractor.
Yeah.
And we don't have the same level of service that they had in the beginning. So where is the documentation that supports long-term maintenance and support service of the service center to support this project? Whatever you put in, what is the long-term maintenance of it?
Yeah.
Who take care of the art projects so it don't get rusted for rain and fall over the years? Who's doing all that? So who is it? MPC or who?
So in terms of okay, let me break this into two parts. The first part is the structural part, the parts which is most of the project, where it's the bridges over, it's the bridge leading up, you know, the walkway leading up from Wood Street, the structure leading up beside Grand Avenue, and all of the other structures. What we plan on doing is data will put them on what we call the bridge inventory, which is things that get repaired using toll funds from the bridge. And then Caltrans will maintain the structures and BATA will pay for it. We are still trying to figure out how we will, you know, do long-term maintenance on the areas like the alleyway and any areas that are at ground level. That is not as clear, and that is more difficult, but that is something that we're trying to work out. But we've heard this feedback and we understand that we really need to think through this and make sure that we have a plan. And so that's part of what we're doing. The main structural parts and you know, keeping it clean, you know, however kind of sweepers need to go on the path and all of that stuff, that will be you know, paid for by BATA through Caltrans, and the other ones we're trying to figure out what the mechanism.
Because we have two parts at the port, right?
Yeah.
Started off and the land that they received for that arts was federal former military base. So it started off in the beginning that port was doing all the maintenance. And then after a while, they contracted out to a third person. We don't need to see this for this major project.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, and so you're referring to the Middle Harbor
Yes.
Shoreline Park, and that anyone who's been there knows that it's not the most well maintained. So I think that the reason this is being considered, it's not as a park, it's a transportation infrastructure. And so it is part of this kind of bigger corridor between San Francisco and the East Bay. And so because of that, there is that kind of guaranteed long-term maintenance to make sure the structure operates and it's able to move, people on bicycles and walking. So that's kind of where it's required that is maintained.
We don't want to end up like Mandela Park, we have to have volunteers monthly come through and clean it up. Have to organize themselves to clean it up.
We have
All
one more
right,
question.
last questions.
I just have a comment on the front-end road. I know one of the main drivers that you're talking about in the beginning was visual appeal for the project. My first gut reaction to this was I'm concerned that if people don't know about this project, they would like this structure would just blend in the middle of freeways. People driving by just won't know what it is.
I'm gonna say it back to you, which is one of your design criteria is that the structure should not. Is that fair?
Sure. It's like it's the middle and yeah.
It's a very crowded kind of space there, right? It's very, I mean, there's like 3 levels of freeways that you're dealing with and railroads. Yeah.
Maybe, no, I appreciate it. It's a good comment. I agree with that as well, but I would say just in terms of where we are on the design phase, if you could name something like the design criteria is, don't let it blend in. That's really helpful to us to be able to realize.
So I think we're probably going to close this meeting for the online part. I want to thank everyone who showed up online. And next slide, please.
There's a QR code.
Yes.
So if you're online and you want to grab a screen grab of the QR code, which I think is also on the next page, we'll get there, that would be great. This is the timeline of where we are in the process. So just the second box on October 10th, a lot of runway ahead of us at this point, including a week from tonight. Next slide. Maybe go back to make sure people got the QR code and we'll leave them hanging. So on the bottom right, there's the QR code. I also think it's on the website for the WOEIP's site, so you can grab it there if you don't like this one. And we'll drop a link in the chat too. All right, 2 more.
Can I just emphasize, so just the upcoming meetings, next week our meeting will be on environmental justice, air pollution, and public health. So we encourage people to come out to that, especially if those are the areas of concern. That will be followed by our streetscape, intersection, and traffic safety meeting. This is really where we will try and get into these intersections and get your feedback on how to make them safe and how you can feel comfortable. And this will be followed 2 weeks after that. So we'll give everyone a little bit of a break, and particularly our designers. And this will be looking at placemaking, design, and historic resources. So hopefully we hope to take a lot of the feedback that we get today and kind of, use the time in between today and that meeting to bring some of the ideas that we got today into that.